you know, we're coming to a close on this end, but the process will continue on for several months. I think this is going to be a quick meeting, so I appreciate everybody joining us online. I think it'll make it easier for everybody. What I want to do is, looking at our agenda, we have two items. We talk about the rule language survey results, and this is less rule language, more rule concepts. But then also talk about the fiscal and economic impact of changing the rules. So what I'd like to do is start with that fiscal and economic impact discussion. So we're interested in finding out, you know, if we change the rules, how's that going to impact the community, the economics of the community, the economics of small businesses? And obviously we have several guides. I would anticipate that those will be the most directly impacted individuals. So if one of the guides would like to start the discussion, that would be appreciated.
Well, I'm not a guide, Alan, but I'll be happy to start the discussion if that's appropriate at this time.
Yeah, go ahead, Jay.
Yeah, so I have a lot of friends that are guides, and how they tell me that this will impact them financially would be if motors couldn't be used, they could only take 2 clients, because when you're it's just the way the boats are designed, and possibly fishing on anchor, you can't have 3 guys casting over the top of each other. But when they use a motor, they can fish 3 clients per day. And so it's a big difference financially for them, because that first client pretty much covers the expenses of the guide, and they don't make any profit unless they can get additional people in the boat with them. And so it'd be I don't know the total dollar amount, but a study would have to be done. But the guides would lose about 1/3 of their income by only being able to take 2 people instead of 3. So that would be something to look at.
Well, I mean, I can't say that I agree with that. Seeing as I row 3 people in my drift boat. The Tillamook area guys that don't have motors, the Nestucca guys, they're running 3 people in their boats, and they're rowing them. You know, they have no motors at all. So yeah, I mean, physically it's going to take you a little bit more effort, but everybody's going to keep floating along. You're going to cover 10 miles of river, and everybody's going to get their shot. So I don't think financially that it's going to be this big loss.
Yeah, and
let me ask a quick question. Is there a difference on how a motorized guide operates versus a non-motorized? Specifically, if you have a motor, are you taking 3 clients or 2 sets of 3 clients, and maybe a motor or a non-motorized would only take 2 sets of 3 clients? Or, you know, can you do more trips with a motor, or are you limited to fewer trips?
You're going to do the same amount of trips in a day. I don't think anybody's running double trips in a day. But I typically run 2 people, but I like running 2 people. I just don't like the chaos of 3. Now, when I have a group of 3, I take the 3. But once I have 2 guys booked, I'm not trying to fill that second seat, and groups typically come in 2s unless you have like a bigger group.
So if the rule became electric only, does that make a difference?
I think guys would be able to run just their 3 people just fine with an electric. Now, the difference would be with the electric, you can't motor back up riffles and, you know, chug back up few hundred yards, a mile. You know, some places you can go back upriver quite a ways with a gas motor. But if you're using like a typical electric motor, it'd be like a Mini Coda 112. You're not going up into the next hole to get another shot at it after you hooked a fish. So it would kind of keep everybody moving along down the river, but you'd still be able to fish your 3 guys.
Let me make sure I understand what you're saying. So if I'm fishing in a hole with an electric motor, I could use the electric motor to recycle or run back up to the top of that hole and drift again. Where if I had a gas motor, I could go 2, 3, 4 holes back up.
Yes.
Okay. And obviously with oars, that could be impossible or very difficult.
With oars, yeah, pretty unlikely you're making it. I mean, I've done it back before I ever put a motor on my boat. I would just, if I hooked a fish or I thought there was more fish in the hole above and it was actually feasible, I'd get out and drag it up. I mean, that's what we do in Alaska. So, but yeah, you're pretty much limited to the hole you're in, and then you keep on moving down the river.
Perfect, thank you. And just for clarification, I'm asking questions just so I understand it. So if the board asks me, you know, does electric have a different impact than a motor? You know, I have an answer, or at least I've got some input. I'm not suggesting that how the board's going to vote. I have no idea. I'm just trying to be prepared to answer questions. So don't take my questions as, you know, I'm planning on recommending or we're going to move in one direction or another. So that's completely the realm of the board. I'm just information for the board. So is there any other impacts to guides then between the motorized and non-motorized or electric?
I think the other one, Alan, that hasn't been mentioned is when you have high river flows, like 7 foot, 8 foot, if you had to row with and not use a motor under a huge flow, the fishing's really good, by the way, at Moonshine when the river's at 7, 8 foot. But physically, that would be a huge strain on the guides, and you might not even be able to fish every day because I mean I can't imagine rowing from Moonshine all the way down on a high flow. You'd probably your body would need some rest, and you might be able to only fish 3 or 4 days a week instead of 7 days a week on a really high flow. So that would be a factor that would limit the guide's income.
Can you hear me, Alan?
I can, Mike.
I'm Mike Holdadar. I'm not Dylan. I'm in Dylan's office because I don't have a video or a camera. Anyway, Nolan brought up that electric motors would be able to make enough ripples. Well, I tell you what, they're making electric motors is equivalent to a 50 horsepower.
So again, Mike, we've talked about this. When we're talking electric motor, we are limiting it to operating at slow no wake speeds. So we're not talking about the 50 horsepower. It would be the Minn Kotas, you know, 55-pound thrust or something along that lines. We're not talking about, you know, a full motorized electric. And, you know, I recognize, I think I've said this before, the fastest electric boat, I think the record is 104 miles per hour or 114 miles per hour. You know, we're not going to let those on the river. And so let me ask a question on the rowing. So if you're rowing, the method of fishing would be to drift between holes, maybe back bounce, back troll, where the oars are just holding the boat back a little bit, or are you just going between holes and anchoring?
Well, I don't think, just given the style of fishing that we've been doing on the Siletz, that people are going to all of a sudden just start dropping anchors everywhere. I mean, we have all got accustomed to moving and covering water, and typically you don't make your whole day in one hole. So, I mean, here's an example. I was on the Siletz on Friday. I floated from Moonshine to town. We picked up fish. I mean, that's a long chunk of water. That's like 10 plus miles of river. We hooked 7 fish. They were spread out throughout the entire drift. And you just keep moving along. You throw a couple casts into a spot, drift it through. Oh, nobody bit. You keep on moving when you're covering water like that. And that's the way everybody's doing it. I mean, everybody is covering long chunks of water. Most guys are putting in at Moonshine and going down to town, or putting in a twin and going down to the bottom of town to the mill site, or even down to Ojala. You just cover a lot of water because the fish aren't all stacked up in one single spot.
Yeah, I mean, people fish different ways, and I think if you took the motors away, there'd be a lot more anchoring than there is now. It's hard to say exactly how many boats would anchor and how many would fish the way Nolan's talking about, but it's reasonable to assume probably 50-50. You'd have 50% of the guys anchoring on sweet spots, and then 50% wouldn't drop their anchor. But which right now, it's like nobody anchors. So it really works better having everybody on the move the way it is now, operating on.
I disagree.
The beauty of having guys drop anchor is in 10 miles of river, there's a ton of spots. And if you're dropping anchor, you're moving slow. The guide fleet doesn't really move that slow. So they're going to continue on down the river. Your anchor guys, a lot of those guys are going to show up later. I know there's a number of people that don't fish the Siletz anymore because of the motors. And those guys all move slow. A lot of people will show back up that haven't been on the Siletz for a while.
So other than the guides, I mean, and I want to make sure we've covered everything, but is there any other fiscal impact to the guides if the rules were changed to either electric only or non-motorized? And I guess there's been the comments about having motors at different flow rates. So is any of those combinations going to impact the guiding business more so than what we've already discussed?
So I think in my email, Alan, I mentioned that the Smith River in California they have like a flow restriction.
Yeah.
So you can run motors at a certain water level and up. I mean, that's a possible option. High water at 6.5 feet and above, if it's 6 a.m. and 6.5 feet or higher, the use of under 10 horsepower gas motors or whatever could be used. I mean, when the river's big, it is heavy, and it is a lot of work to be out there and get your guys on fish from the horse.
Hey, Alan. To monitor. There's no way you can monitor such a thing. You couldn't enforce it.
Well, I mean, we do have places that on the Rogue. Correct me if I'm wrong, Alan. On the Rogue, did we just recently implement a restriction that it's a CFS restriction on the Rogue that the State Marine Board implemented? So there is ways to enforce it, and there's ways to engage it. So to say that there's no way to enforce it or no way to gauge it, I wouldn't say that's correct, because the State Marine Board has already set the precedent on that.
It's not like that Siletz River is constant and it's full per day, depending on the rains. So how do you How do you allow people to put a boat in if the river's dropping?
You just
So-
do a time cutoff, I think would be best. Like if it's, at this time, 6 a.m. every time, if you look at the river at the gauge and it's 6 a.m. and it's below 6 feet or below 6.5 feet.
So
No motor.
let's keep this discussion to the financial impact, not how
Okay.
we're going to implement the rule that we come up with. Todd, I think you were trying to step in.
Yeah, I apologize. I'm in training out of my office, and so it just got loud. So I turned my microphone off here for a minute. I didn't know how bad that was getting to
No,
everybody.
you're fine doing that.
And so my only, because I guide part-time right now, to pursue other opportunities in my community. And so being a hobby guide is what we would call it, because I'm not a full-time guide. The economical impacts on the guides, there is going to be some. I think we can all agree to that. There is going to be some economical impacts to the guides. But the premise of this is, when do we start putting the resource first? That's really what we're talking about. I mean, I can't dispute that Nolan and Jerome, all the people that really make a run at guiding full time. And I apologize, Jerome, I don't know if you do or not. I don't know what, I don't know what you do. But what I'm saying is, we need to start putting the resource first. And that's really the basis of all of this. And so, we get sidetracked with other things, and we can talk about what they've done on other rivers and take two, but there's far more rivers that have no motors. And those guides seem to be making it just fine. And so there is going to be impact, no doubt about it. But with education to our clients, charge more per seat. I mean, that literally is what we're going to push. No matter what, when I was guiding full time, you're going to push that cost off onto the consumer anyway. It's business 101. And our clients, they're not, I've got a handful of clients that save up all year to go fishing with me. The rest of my clients, it doesn't matter how much we charge. If they enjoy fishing with you and you offer a reputable service, they're going to fish with you. That's the reality of it. And so what I'm saying is, we just need to start putting this resource first. And this is how, and we got to get in front of it. No doubt, because you can run motors on the upper Siletz. There's more people coming to the Siletz just because you can run a motor, not because they care about our resource. I don't want to see guides not be able to work the Siletz. I have a lot of friends that guide the Siletz, and it should be open for them to make money there, but do you make $700 in a day, and is that a good day? Or do you make $400 in a day, and is that a good day? There's not one. I don't think there's very many guides that can tell you what it costs to run a trip, right down to the penny. And so, to get into that argument, it takes a lot more depth of what it costs. So that's the only thing that I want to say, on this fiscal impact. Yes, there is going to be some impact on the guides, for sure.
Okay.
Can't dispute that. But again, we care about the resource, and how do we make it better for everybody? And I agree with Nolan. There's a lot of people that don't fish the Siletz anymore because of the motors. So how do we make it more usable for more people, and be better stewards?
Okay. So I think we've kind of addressed the financial impact of the guide. Are there other financial impacts? I'm not, is there a transport service or a, blank as the word?
The shuttle
shuttle
service.
Yeah.
Yeah, there is. And they're still going to be in business, because people are going to still run shuttles. No matter what, people are still going to fish the Siletz River. It's the Siletz.
Yeah. No,
And so-
I'm just trying to understand what the full impact is. Because I could see that a shuttle service, if there was no motors, that might promote be beneficial to a shuttle service, because you have less guys putting in and taking out at the same location. Is that a fair assumption?
No,
Or
I don't
does
think the
everybody
shuttle
put it up
service,
top and
I don't think
down
the shuttle
below
service
somewhere?
is,
If anything, I think there'll probably be more shuttles. I know on a big water day, when I was in college and broke, and all I had was just a drift boat. Big water day, what we would do is double float. It's instead of working, just clawing back up at the river trying to get another pass in a spot. Well, we were like, okay, we'll just float it again. So we'd float from Moonshine to Twin, pull out, go back up, do it again. And I've seen, and during that time, before gas motors were super popular, in the early 2000s and like 2000 7 to 13 or so, double floats were super common, and I've seen many guides that are out there today do double floats. So
Does somebody have an idea, like on a big fishing day, how many guides, how many boats are on the river?
I've seen 30 plus people put in at Moonshine before, or 30 plus boats.
Yeah, it was that way last weekend too. 20 boats plus at Moonshine putting in.
Okay.
And they all of them had motors, by the way. Either gas
You don't
or
see one
electric.
without it.
So, how else, is there any other changes that would impact, the local community? I don't know if, gas sales change, or, obviously a drift boat isn't using a whole lot of gas during the day, but, local restaurants, convenience stores, I don't know if there's like bait tackle in Siletz.
I can speak for myself, Alan. Like, I come over, and just to clarify, Todd, I'm not a guide, and it's just that we're all on the same page. I'm just a recreational fisherman, so we're all good. I just want to make sure nobody thinks I'm a fishing guide, so that I don't have that skin in that game. But I do probably come over to the Siletz 3 times a year on average. 3 trips a year. I come over, I book a hotel for a night or two, depending on how many days we're going to fish. We eat at the restaurants, $150 there, and I'm just one of, I know many guides that have clients that come from a ways away and come to spend money there. And there will be an exodus, no matter what anybody wants to say, there will be an exodus of a certain number of guides out of this river system that will go to other rivers, and that economic impact will go away. It'll go somewhere else, but it will go away from the local Newport area. It's what you want to say that number is, I don't know, but there will be certain people leaving and not spending time. They're going to spend way more time on the Umpqua, especially more of the guides that can go left or go right when they wake up in the morning. And so that will be a loss, in my opinion, to the area in one way or another.
Yeah,
So,
I guess.
I would like to respond to that because
Yeah, go ahead, Angela.
I think the nature of guiding will change on our river. I think this river is a desirable river to float and to fish. And so if we see an exodus of motorized users, we're going to see that vacuum filled by non-motorized drifters and guides and fishermen. And so I think there might be a lot of offset to that, because this river is going to change the character of the opportunity, and the experience is going to change. I think you're still going to see a lot of people that want to come here and experience this river and pay for the service to do that. And, you're saying you're staying in hotels and eating in restaurants. That's in Newport. Okay, that's Lincoln County, but that's not really local to Siletz. Okay, what we see local to Siletz is people come here and they utilize our resources, but they don't really spend their money here. You don't see fishermen going to Little Chief very much. We've actually talked to the local coffee shop. During the height of the fishing season, they actually started opening earlier, hoping to catch fishermen coming into our community and getting coffee before they go out on the river. They had to adjust their hours. They did not see a bump in sales during the height of the fall fishing. And so that trickle down economics that people like to think is there really isn't there, and they're not spending money at our gas station. And so, yes, there's economic impact, but I think it's a fallacy to think that economics will go in the opposite direction. I think the nature of it will change. but you're going to see people still wanting to come to the Siletz and experience this river.
I agree with that 100%, Angela.
Yeah, I was going to say that it sounds like from the comments, there, with any rule change, there will be use changes, but there's not a clear fiscal impact to the community from what I'm hearing. Would you guys agree that's fair?
I agree with that.
Yeah.
Hey, Alan, maybe as part of this, just to provide a little background context to us, I know we'll get into that in a second, but it may have to do with the financial impacts. One of the options in that survey you sent out was no guides at all above moonshine. And I just kind of want to get some context on where that evolved from, that thought process. I mean, because you can't tell me that if you went that far, that wouldn't be a huge financial impact on the area as a whole.
I think, Jerome, Alan, Jerome, you just said no guides above moonshine. You meant to say no guides above Morgan.
I'm sorry, Morgan.
Yeah, I understood that. So we've heard that as a potential issue, potential source of conflict. So give you a preview. That was the least popular option. And well, let's table this for just a second. Because I think we're wrapping up the financial aspect of it. Is there any other fiscal impacts that changing the rules would have in the community? And I'm defining community however we need to define community. I agree, or I understand, Angela, that the town of Siletz may not be impacted. It sounds like the broader Lincoln County may have some impact, and that's relevant for rulemaking purposes. And I'm not putting a value judgment on where who should or shouldn't be benefiting. I'm just trying to understand if the rule is changed, what's that impact look like? So unless somebody else has some additional discussion on the financial impact, I think we can go ahead to proposed rules or the results of the rules.
Hey, Alan, this is Chris Knutson, ODFW.
Yeah, Chris.
Yeah, the board may inquire about, how any changes might affect license sales. And I would say for the most part, I'm talking about fishing licenses. I think for the most part, any change would be nominal. I don't have a good sense right now for how many guides sell or how many daily licenses are bought. So if there's a reduction in guides, that might come with some small reduction of sales of daily fishing licenses. But I don't think it'd be substantial. I mean, the nature of the fishery would change, but license sales probably would be hard to measure any changes.
Thanks, Chris.
Yeah.
Can I say something, Alan?
Sure.
Alan, we're skipping over a large part of the Siletz River. We're forgetting about Morgan Park up. And if you want to talk fiscal being detrimental to the guides, they make a hell of a lot of money fishing these fall fish, and they ain't gonna be able to take 6, 7, 8 guys upriver from Morgan Park up if we restrict these motors. So that's gonna really hurt them. But like I told one guide, I said, you can put in at the Old Jello Bridge and go down. You don't have to go upriver. So nobody's taking money out of his pocket other than the amount of people he can put in his boat. So let's not forget about how the river responds to these motors, these sled boats blowing up the river. Don't ever forget that.
Okay.
Anyway, we need to protect the resources on the sleds and not just cater to the guides or anybody that's got a giant sled boat.
Thanks, Mike. So let's jump.
Just one real quick final comment. Would there be a physical hit to the Marine Board if you lost guide license revenue or gas tax money or whatever, that should be probably factored into a potential financial hit to the Marine Board. I mean,
Well, you're assuming that people are going to give up their guide license altogether. I would predict that they're just going to shift their use to a different system. So I think that's a big leap.
And
boat registration.
so the process we go through, I'll work internally to understand the impact of that, and that's we will consider those factors.
So, as far as I can understand, as far as I am aware, there are not any guides on the Siletz that just fish the Siletz. Like, we move around. You got to move around to find the fish. So if you can't, yeah, you just have to be flexible. So I don't see anybody just quitting guiding because, oh, I can't fish the Siletz, I quit.
Yeah, no, we understand that as well. We recognize that guides are much more mobile, especially with the advent of social media. And so we recognize that guides do move around quite a bit more than what they may have done historically. So let's go ahead and talk about the rule survey. So let me give you some background on how I developed the questions. And I took these internally with a couple of the other individuals around here. And so, the first option we had was no motors above Jack Morgan, and that was the petition language. And then we looked at, potential, and for this purposes, that's kind of the most restrictive option. So we're looking at various other options that are less restrictive in general. So the second option was, ban gas-powered motors. A lot of people believe that electric has less impact than gas. And so I would say that is probably this, a less intrusive option. The other option was limiting to 15 horsepower. And so the thought behind that is that would restrict the large guide boats or large recreational boats from traveling large distances upstream. I don't think if we limited to, and I'm saying 15 horsepower because that's what we did on the Rogue, maybe 10's appropriate here, I'm not sure yet. But I would guess that if you put a 10 to 15 horsepower motor on a drift boat, you're unlikely to travel from Ojala up to Moonshine. Whereas if you had, 50, 75 horsepower, you might be willing to do that. So I do think that a 15 horsepower or small motor restriction does provide some protections that the RAC members have requested. The fourth option was kind of a hybrid option where on the lower stretch of the river, we allow the small gas motor. On an upper stretch of the river, we restrict motors altogether. And when I sent that survey out, at this point, I just picked Hihi as a dividing line. The board, if they like that potential option, they may pick Ojala, they may pick Twin. So don't get hung up on the dividing line. That's kind of arbitrary. And if the board wants us to move in that direction, then we'll specifically look at, what the impact is of, the dividing line. The fifth option was no guides. And we have heard that guides create conflict. And that, I think we heard it a little bit out of the RAC, but not a lot. So that really wasn't RAC driven, but it is comments we've heard. And that was the least popular option. So I don't think that's going to become a reality. And then the last option was making no changes. And generally, my assessment is half of the RAC members want it non-motorized. The other half want no changes. So looking at this, and what I did is I just took everybody's vote, and not, just for full disclosure, not everybody voted on every option. And so I'm just taking a raw number, not looking at an average score. So what's interesting is the number in, if everybody scored no motors as their top priority, that would be a total of 6 points. So I just added them up. So we're playing golf here. The most popular option was actually dividing the river to a non-motorized and a horsepower restriction section. The second option was limiting it to 15 horsepower. The third option was electric only. The fourth option was non-motorized. And the fifth option was no change. And again, no guides was the last option. And let me give you the numbers. So 13 for the divided, 15 for horsepower restriction, 17 for electric, 19 for no motors, and 20 for no change. And then 28 for no guides. So
Can you go through
clearly,
that again?
yeah.
Can you
So-
refer to them by, yeah, okay.
So the split, or the divided river, had a score of 13. Horsepower restriction was 15. Electric only was 17. No motors was 19. And then no change was 20. And then 28 for the no guides. So based on that, I'm presenting to the board at the end of the month, and what we typically try and do is we'll present the petition option because that's what was requested. Then we always have the no change option. The board could always decide that changing the rules isn't appropriate. And in this case, because of the spectrum, the non-motorized and no change are kind of, at the ends of the spectrum, and we have a lot of room in between. So what I'm proposing is, or presenting to the board, in addition to that, is kind of that hybrid option. And I'm not presenting it specifically a dividing line at Ojala, at Illahee, and a 15 and non-motorized. I'm opening the discussion. If the board wants to discuss that option, they can tell us to figure out where the appropriate line is. They may want to look at a 15 horsepower one section, electric only in another section, or no, electric only in the lower and non-motorized in the upper. That's where we can have, if they want to make it dependent on the flows. So this is not a specific, they get to choose A, B, or C. This is going to be the board telling us what direction they want to move in, what they want us to explore. And then as we go forward, with that, we'll have some additional discussions to, let's assume for a second the board wants us to explore a hybrid option. Then we'll be reaching out to various interested parties to say, does Illahee make sense? Does Mill make sense? Does Ojala make sense? For a dividing line, if the board wants a flow rate, then we'll be reaching out, ODF&W, various other interested parties to say, what flow rate should we consider? And understanding, what does 5 feet look like versus 7 feet? So does that make sense? And does anybody have any questions about that process?
It makes sense, yeah. And Alan, I have a proposal I'd like to make when the time is appropriate during this meeting that would represent the consensus opinion of the Siletz Anglers Association.
Yeah, let's save that for the end comments. So does anybody have any questions or comments about the rule options that I presented and kind of description of what I'm planning on taking to the board? And again, I'm just looking at potential options for the board to consider. I don't get a vote. Nobody on staff gets a vote. At this point, this is informational, and this will be a template for the board to kind of open their discussion and figure out which direction they want staff to focus.
Alan, can
Yeah,
I
Alan,
say something?
go ahead, Mike.
Oops.
Alan, on that survey, option on motor size, you say 15 horse. My option was, and I even wrote it down, nothing larger than a 10 horse.
Yeah,
Because I'll tell you why. A guide boat that can run 6 people in his boat says he can make it from Morgan Park up with a 15 horse in his big sled boat. So what are we gonna accomplish by having that motor size at 15? We wanna try to save these spawn beds, but it's gonna make them worse. If these boats can make them riffles on a 15 and a big sled boat, what are we accomplishing? Nothing.
yep, I received that comment, and that will be part of the discussion with the board. And like I said, I just picked 15 because that's what we did on the Rogue. And what we did on the Rogue is not going to dictate what we're going to do here. And just for context, Mike, typically
River is a lot smaller river than Rogue River. You have to consider the river, not the amount of flow in the river is a lot different than the Rogue.
yeah, no, that's what I'm saying. Just because we did it on the Rogue doesn't mean we'll do it on the Siletz. And typically, my understanding is the placard on a drift boat limits the horsepower to 10 horsepower. And Siletz is a different river than the Rogue. So 10 may be more appropriate, but that would be for the board to decide if they want to restrict it to 10.
That would be perfect.
I think
so
you
I'd
started
like
to speak, Angela.
Yeah, I did. Thank you. I'd just like to comment on a couple of different aspects of these alternatives. One, I'm not surprised that the no guide alternative was the least popular. It was patently unfair and not one that I could support at all. I don't even know how it got into the recommendations. And so I just think that one just needs to go away entirely. In terms of the gas motors, that does not address the issue at all. You know, we've had these discussions over and over about the power of the electrical motors and how that technology is changing. And so just looking at gas does not in any way address the concern that's raised by motorized use on this river. So I don't think that one's a very viable. I agree with Mike. 15 horsepower is too hot, too big for this river altogether. And then the other alternative, which seems to be the one that might be the most favored at this point, is to split the river and, you know, no motorized above and motorized below. Again, I don't think that fully addresses the concerns that were raised and the reasons why this petition was filed to begin with. You said it yourself, Alan, the dividing line is arbitrary. That does not address the issue at hand. An arbitrary line just creates more conflict and more issues. And so I don't know how you decide where that line should be, because we have main stem spawners throughout this entire stretch of river. And so are you going to sacrifice, you know, fish in the lower river versus the upper river. It also does not address the concern of the major landowners along the river segments. And so some of them are going to get relief from the motorized use and some of them aren't. And who gets to decide? Well, gee, sorry, you're in the lower river. You just got to keep putting up with this. And so I think it is an arbitrary and hard to define and defend type of alternative. So I think that's something that needs to be discussed.
Yeah, and just for the record, Angela, I was saying that my designation of LE was arbitrary just because that's roughly halfway between Moonshine and Jack Morgan. If the board wants to explore that, we will look at more detail and get a better understanding. But so I do understand your board.
Yeah, well, and I guess my point is that any line you draw is arbitrary. And it's going to be hard to defend. And so
Yeah, no, I was just making the distinction that my comment about being arbitrary was just me picking LAE. And I do understand your comment about any line being arbitrary. And I appreciate the difference.
All right, Alan, can I make a suggestion to address both Mike and Angela's recent comments and Nolan's earlier comment about a CFS restriction?
Yes, sir.
Is this a good time? Because I think I have something that it's an option for the board to explore as a potential draft rule, which is I know what this meeting's all about. And I have to say, as I've said all along here, I don't think there's a conflict issue on the water. I'm out there fishing the Siletz weekly, year round, and on the water there is no conflict. It's not a reality. There's conflict for folks that don't fish, that think the river should be a certain way and it's not the way they want it to be. There's a conflict there, and I'd be happy to take you or anybody for a float down the river any day to show you that there isn't any conflict going on. And this is 100% a social issue, and it's not about the fishery or a safety issue in any way. So with that being said, though, I see a future where all user groups can work together with the tribe and everybody to have a great Siletz River experience for everybody involved. That's kind of the goal. And I don't think we all love that place and we want to work together to build a strong community there in Siletz and around the area and all get along and enjoy the resource. And I feel like if we have a big fight over this deal, nobody's going to win. Everybody's going to get upset with each other and it'll kind of destroy some good things that have happened over the last few years to build a community in Siletz. So I think that as an olive branch, what a lot of the fishermen would like to extend is a solution that kind of meets in the middle, which is kind of like what your survey results just showed. And so here's the option for the board to explore as a draft rule, and would be a 15 horsepower restriction from Morgan to Moonshine. And if the river flow drops below 4 foot, no motors allowed from town to Moonshine. So, and I'll say it again, a 15 horse restriction from Morgan to Moon. And if the river drops below 4.0 foot, no motors from town to Moonshine. So that kind of jives with what Nolan was talking about, a CFS restriction, which you guys have done on other rivers like the Rogue. I think it would be for the property owners that live on the river. They would consider this a win because they wouldn't have to listen to big motors running around on the river behind their house. And I think the tribe could view this as a potential win because about half the year the Siletz is above 4 foot and half the year it's below 4 foot. Depends on the year and how much rain. But the tribe could say, hey, we got motors taken off the river above town for half the year. That's a win. You know, it's a middle ground. That solution like this would also be a win for the guides and the recreational fishermen like myself and Jerome. We'd be able to continue to use rivers on our drift boats during higher flows, which, you know, it helps you for safety and different fishing techniques and whatnot. So I think that's a win-win-win for everybody concerned. Everybody wouldn't get exactly what they want, but everybody would get some good stuff that they want, and it would be a great compromise. So I just wanted to throw that out there on the table as a potential draft rule for the board to explore.
I don't agree with that whatsoever. 4 foot, especially. I mean, nobody's using motors at 4 foot. If it's so low, especially above town, you almost have to raft it. And I know a number of guys that have picked up rafts this year.
But it would, you know, remember that video that the tribe showed at one of our meetings? That was taken when the river was at 2.5 foot. So if you lifted it 1.5 foot and you know, said no motors above town at 4 foot, then at least you would not be hurting the spawning gravel, and that would address that situation that there was a concern for some folks on the rack.
And
Well, I
so
believe.
hey, let me step in here.
All right.
Let's not talk about the flow rates, because I think, you know, this will be part of the discussion with the board. If they think that's a reasonable option that they would like us to explore, then we can try and figure out if there is a flow rate where that makes more sense. And I'm not saying Jay's wrong at 4 feet. I don't know, but this isn't going to be the place to really work out the details if it's 4, 5, 6, or 7. Because I don't know if the board wants to explore that option at this point. If they do, we will certainly, investigate that further.
Yeah, one other advantage, and it's not, some folks on the rack mentioned water quality, but I mean, you could make the cutoff the water intake on the town loop. And if you didn't have motors above the water intake for half the year or more than half the year, that's a win for those that are worried about water quality. You'd have no motors above the water intake place for, you know, when the river was 4 foot or lower, which is a considerable part of the year. Anyway, I just wanted to throw that out on the table for Alan to share with the board as a potential draft rule or an example of what could be a win-win-win for everybody.
I appreciate
I would
that.
just like to add, what's the win for the resource?
Well,
That would be my question to Alan, is what, again, we're going to go back to, when does the resource win?
Yeah. I appreciate these comments.
And community is not just on the river. It is the Siletz community, all the landowners, everybody around. That is the community. It's just not there. There is conflict there, and the conflict is in our community where we live.
Yeah.
But let's keep in mind that the Siletz River in and of itself is a state river governed by the state of Oregon for the citizens of the state of Oregon, not just for a local community, just like all the rest of us go to the Columbia River, which is a joint river between 2 states. These are resources for the state of Oregon and for every citizen, that it's not one user group, this river.
So let's go ahead and wrap this meeting up, because I think we're starting to head off topic, and we can sit here and argue back and forth, but ultimately the role of the RAC is to provide advice to the board, which I think we have. We have a lot of good suggestions. And just as a reminder, so the 29th is the board meeting. Thursday. You're welcome to show up at the Marine Board for that meeting, or it will be available online. The goal at this meeting is to have a discussion with the board and have the board provide us with guidance of how they want to move forward and what type of rule they want to consider. So once, if they provide guidance and if they decide to move forward with a rule, like I said, they can stop the rulemaking process at any time. I don't anticipate that, but it is a possibility. We'll be reaching out with some guidance from the board to narrow in what the rule should be. If they like the hybrid option, we will explore specifically what that hybrid option looks like and what factors they want us to consider. So we will be reaching out to understand those options. At the April board meeting, we hope to have proposed rules for the board to either, hopefully to approve. Once they approve those draft rules, then we'll begin the public comment process. We'll have the opportunity to provide written comment. We'll have public hearings, and we anticipate that the board will have a work session. If you want to be part of that work session and be an invited guest to have discussion, let us know, and we'll figure out, or excuse me, the board will figure out what groups they want to hear from. And then at the July board meeting, we may have a vote on our final rule. And again, the board may want some additional changes, so we may go to the October board meeting. But like I said at the beginning, we're still at the front end of the process. There'll be a lot more opportunities to provide comments, have discussions. So this isn't the end, this is the beginning. Does anybody have questions on process at this point?
What date? Oh, go ahead, Angela.
Well, I was just wondering about this rack in particular. Are we done now? Are we disbanded, or are we expected to continue to meet and consider throughout the rest of the process?
This is the last meeting of the RAC. And so we use this as a learning tool to understand, the details of what's going on, what the concerns are. We've gotten a lot of good information. I've learned a lot about the Siletz. I still have lots to learn, and I will have more of an opportunity to learn as we go through this process. But the formal RAC process is over. That doesn't mean that, me or the board might be reaching out to individuals to understand more details, but the formal RAC process is done.
What's the date and time and location of the January meeting with the board?
It's January 29th, starting at 9 a.m., 8:30 a.m. It will be held at the Marine Board. You're welcome to show up. There's limited opportunity for public comment at the beginning of the board meeting. We have a very full agenda, with the Siletz only being one of about 10 different items ish, that we'll be discussing. And so I don't know how long the public comment process will be. We do anticipate the meeting going most of the day. And then we don't have the next board meeting scheduled, but that'll be out on our website when we get that scheduled.
What's your address for where the meeting will be?
It's at 435 Commercial Street Northeast, Suite 400, and that's in Salem.
Got it. Thank you.
All right, with that, we have requests for public comment. And do any of the RAC members have any closing comments they'd like to make? Okay, we'll open it up for public comment. Let's take 3 minutes per commenter. And let's start with Scott Ammerman. Scott, are you still here?
I am sorry. I was trying to get my camera and microphone turned back off. I'm used to using different platforms, so Teams is a little bit out for me. So go ahead and
I
tell me when my
understand.
3 minutes start.
Go ahead.
Okay, so I think that a lot of here people talk about, you know, how do we protect the Siletz? Todd asked, what's the win for the Siletz? And I think the win for the Siletz is all of us users continuing to work forward to make the Siletz a better place. You know, the tribe's doing a lot of positive things for the Siletz. I think the Siletz Anglers does a lot of positive things for the Siletz. And I think a huge conflict where we war between the two sides is not going to be a win for the Siletz. I think that's going to divide our community and do that stuff. So Jay talked about a compromise. I'm really hoping we can find something like that. I know that we originally talked about a 15 horse because Mike Kozador talked about having a 15 horse on his little sled and that kind of thing. So I think that we could remove a lot of the big boats and meet a lot of the concerns that Mike had about having big boats in his backyard. I think that we could talk a lot about, you know, any water quality, any bank erosion, anything like that by having a CFS restriction. I think those would be all positive things. And I think that, you know, if we start, you know, fighting amongst ourselves, it's not going to be a win here. So I really hope that we can find common ground and come together as a community to make the Siletz the best place it possibly can. Alan, you talked at the beginning about financial impacts, and I will say that there will be a, you know, severe financial impact. Obviously, the guide thing got voted or removed, so you won't have, you know, people not registering as guides, but you will have boat registrations will drop, gas tax money will drop. You talked about financial impact towards guiding. I know that when I calculate my guiding income, you know, my expenses, $30 a day for a shuttle, gas drive to the river and back, boat payments, truck payments, all that stuff pretty much eats up entirely one of my 3 clients in the boat every day. It actually probably goes about 20% into the second client. So if I'm forced to row, I could take 2 clients. I would lose over 50% of my income during the winter months. And I know Nolan says that that's not a concern for him, but Nolan predominantly, like he said, likes to fish 2 people. So his expenses and whatever might be different than mine. But so there's going to be a huge financial impact to that. There'll be a financial impact to the community. The people, if I have clients, so I have 3 clients come down and stay in a hotel in Lincoln City, they're going to hit 2 hotel rooms instead of 1. Those 2 hotel rooms might be, you know, right next to Chinook, you know, Wynn Casino, and they might run over and hit the casino, 3 people in the casino instead of 2, and that kind of stuff. So I think anything we can do that, you know, doesn't restrict to how much income those people makes big. And so I just think anything we can do that keeps our community strong, keeps us all working together for a better Siletz to be a positive thing. And I think everybody in this room loves the Siletz and sees the benefit in having a strong, powerful Siletz River. And, you know, that's true of the angling groups and that's true of the tribe. And I just hope we can work together because I feel like we were getting a lot of great stuff done over the last 5 or 10 years, and I hope that continues.
Thank you, Scott. Matt Halseth, are you still online?
Yeah, I'm still online.
Go ahead and you've got 3 minutes for a comment.
Okay. So yeah, just Scott kind of said most of the stuff that I was thinking. If there's rule changes, people will leave, and just I hate to see things taken away from everybody. We seem to live in a society where that happens a lot, and I think it's completely unfair. And we will, by not having people there to fish, we will lose advocates for the resource. I mean, that's how it works. Somebody mentioned charging more per seat. I mean, the market's flooded. You can't really do that. I think there's a lot bigger issues with the Siletz River than gas motors. And I think that, you know, a 10% user group should not be able to dictate, you know, everyone that uses the resource. That's just not like fair. I don't have a ton to say, so I'll pass my minutes on to someone else. So that's it for me.
I appreciate your comments, Matt. Thank you. Is Cam Ellis?
Thank you.
Oh, sorry. Thank you.
Yes, I'm
Cam
here.
Ellis?
Thank you.
Go ahead. You've got 3 minutes.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, my name is Cam Ellis, and I originally had 3 comments I was going to talk about. I think one of them really goes off the table. I think it sounds like that's kind of behind the discussion here on the maybe the stirring up sediment and things like that with the drift boat motors. So I'm not going to belabor that one much. I did submit a letter earlier in April that talks about that, and some of the citations were much larger boats and jet motors and things of that nature. So I didn't hear a lot of discussion on that, so I'm going to move off of that one. I would say personally, as far as the financial aspect of that, and I appreciate Scott having some comment on that, but I didn't hear any really firm numbers on what that looks like to your comment, Alan. And so is there going to be a follow-up on that with some guides, and more than maybe just the 2 or 3 that are on the call here today, but really try to get an idea if there is a financial impact or not, or there will be, but what is that? How do you get that quantified and be able to take some, numbers to the board for that discussion? So that would be my comment there. I would think that, there could be there was discussed earlier, the potential for more people anchoring. That could be part of that same discussion, have a financial discussion with the guides. Is that going to be impact? And then also with the guides and fishermen, would there be more anchoring or not? And is there more damage to the system because of that? That would be something to potentially follow up on. One thing I didn't hear anything about on this discussion today was the broodstock program. Would there be an impact to the broodstock program without having motors? So I think that would be that's a question I have, is because I know that there's some guides that participate in that, and that's beneficial to the river. And would that be an impact if there's a change to policy on this? And I guess my last thing is, fishing evolves just like everything around us. There's change every day, right? So fishing is one of those things where, whether it be the actual equipment itself, the techniques, the ways people fish. Those things that will occur. How do we best adapt to that and have everybody have a resource that could be used by everybody going forward? So that's really my comments. So thank you for the time for public opinion on this, public comment.
Thank you, Mr. Ellis. That's the last person who signed up to speak, but we do have some additional time. So Jennifer provided me with a list of folks that are participating, and obviously we have a couple hands up. So I will give each of those individuals who want to speak 3 minutes as well. It looks like Ty Wyatt was the first person at his hand up. So Mr. Wyatt, you have 3 minutes. Go ahead and unmute yourself. And your 3 minutes will start once you're available.
Hey guys, thanks. I just want to thank everyone for being involved, regardless of all our different viewpoints and all the different emotions. And I would just, I'm someone who grew up in Corvallis. The Siletz I consider one of my 3 home rivers, Big Elk, LC, Siletz. I fish from Alaska, Canada, live in Washington now, and I would like to reiterate some of the people who are involved in this, like Chris, with the idea that this isn't a conservation issue, this is an allocative issue. And guides are providing opportunities to people that wouldn't normally have access to this resource. I don't feel that if we remove motors, that anchoring is going to give people more opportunities. And it's certainly not going to be any less destructive than a motor, and arguably more destructive, if it even matters. So, listen, I think the proposal as written is what this is about. It isn't about all these compromises. It's either motors or no motors. And from that standpoint, and as an advocate for angler opportunities that are decreasing like every day, there's another place I can't fish, or there's a new rule that a different way we can't fish. The big picture here is to try and find a better positive outcome from all of them. We should all be on the same side, man. If this was about conservation, we'd be addressing all the water we're drawing out of the river that's going into somebody's home, or all the fertilizer that runs off and goes in. So that, that's my comment. And this is an emotional issue for me because this is one of my favorite rivers in the world to fish, even if I only get to go down there a couple of times a year. And I may not use a motor. Like, I'm a big advocate for rowing because that's how I like to fish. But you know what? I'm getting older, and those days may be numbered. So listen, I think everybody has a different feeling on this, but as written, I just want to say I really oppose any motor ban on the Siletz. If you go fish the Trask right now, you're not going to get to fish a bunch of holes because there's going to be somebody camping in a hole on anchor, or somebody out there waiting, swinging a fly. So, hats off to them. Everybody wants a different way to fish. Listen, there's a lot of really, really educated, talented, involved people on this call. So I just want to thank everybody for voicing their opinion and being involved. And that's all I have to say. Thanks, guys.
Appreciate your comments, Mr. Wyatt. Looks like we have Mr. Lane with his hand up. Go ahead, Mr. Lane. I'm not sure if we have junior or senior.
Good morning. This is Junior, but I'm Alfred Lane the Fourth, but I am Buddy,
Yes.
the younger version. It's good to be here and hear from everyone and all the different opinions, and I appreciate the work everyone's and efforts folks have put in here. I hear a lot of things that are kind of almost poetic to me. I've heard about the loss of rights. I hear about folks saying there are no conflict, and telling that to a Siletz tribal member, talking about right losses and our ability to exercise our rights had been diminished through a piece of legislation called the consent decree. It was based in fear and racism, and that's no longer here. And talk about resources and funds that are expended. I can't think of anyone that's put more man hours and resources into the protection of the Siletz River, which Siletz people consider a being, something that's alive and with us. The Siletz River is ground zero for the Confederated Tribes of Siletz Indians. It bears our name, and it's the heart of our reservation. So I also heard someone talking about Oregon is the ultimate has the ultimate rights for all rivers. That is not always the case, especially when dealing with Indian tribes and reservations. I think our petition here is a measured, reasonable approach. There are other avenues. There are unadjudicated rights that the Siletz tribes has, and courts all over the country, no tribes possess these things. So nowhere in our position or our petition have we moved to restrict a particular group of users. That's been something I've heard. They just want the river for themselves. We're not saying that. We're saying a measured approach that takes into account destruction of the environment, pollution, destruction of salmon beds, what's best for the resource, and the conflict that folks say doesn't exist. Well, it's probably because you don't live in Siletz, and maybe you're not a Siletz Indian or a Siletz person in this community. Myself, I've fished this river my entire life, as did my father and his grandfather and my great-grandfather, going back to when our ancestors were brought from different places all throughout Western Oregon in 1855 here, before Oregon was even a state. So we get pushed off of places, and for tribal members, we haven't fared well in society for a number of generations. Cops being called, probably going to be the Siletz Indian that's hauled off versus someone that might have been creating conflict or telling them to get off the river. ODF&W yourselves, when the consent decree was being negotiated, was explicit. They meant to leave us with as little as possible. We were pushed off the main stem to our cultural fishing sites at Rock Creek and Euchre Creek and Dewey Creek. And that is changing. We have land on the main stem now, and we will be using those areas for culturally fishing. So I think the potential, I know conflict is already there. I think it only stands to increase. And I think working together as we are, be seeing landowners, non-tribal landowners that for a lot of my life, it's kind of been a adversarial relationship, I'd say. Not outright,
Mr.
but
Ling?
just some
Mr. Ling?
unease. Yes.
Sorry to interrupt. The time's expired. If you could wrap up your comments, I would appreciate it.
Okay. Just I'll finish that last point. Seeing those landowners in step with the Siletz tribe speaks volumes to me about being in a good place, in a measured approach to protect this resource and eliminate the conflict that exists on the Siletz River. Thank you.
Thank you. Angela, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you, Alan. I just want to make one point and talk about something I'd responded in the chat, but I'm sure not everyone can see the chat. So, you know, folks, we've been hearing about anchoring, that, well, if you take away the motors, people are going to anchor and hang out in the holes and create other conflicts. Well, if that's a predictable result of a motor ban, then the board owes it to the resource and the user groups to address that in their rulemaking. So you could be very explicit about that. No motorized use and no anchoring in holes. We also should look at tributary streams. Some of our streams are large enough you actually could take a small boat up them, like Rock Creek. So if there is some sort of restriction or ban put in place, then it should include all tributaries. It should include the entirety of the Siletz River above Moonshine Park. You know, during certain flows, you can motor upstream from Moonshine Park for a short distance at least. So I think as the Marine Board considers these rules, there needs to be a lot of thought put into ramifications, unintended consequences, and address those as we see fit. Because I keep hearing this anchoring, and we've actually had folks almost threaten that they would drag anchors and create problems if their motors are taken away. And so that needs to be taken seriously and considered during rulemaking. Thank you.
Thank you, Angela. So that's the last of the hands. With that, thank you everybody for your participation, especially the RAC members who've been committed for these last several months. I appreciate all your input. I appreciate the support and the public comment. And like I said, we will have additional opportunities for public comment. And I didn't mention this earlier, but we do tribal consultations, and those will continue through this process as well. But with that, I appreciate your time and energy, and we'll continue to have the conversation in a different format. Thank you very much.
Hey, Alan.
Thanks, Alan.